The past is not behind you, it's underneath you, and something is moving it. Reality has a version history, and you're not living in the first draft. Some people in this video have caught the edit, and whatever's responsible isn't human, and the alteration is deliberate. This is what happens when you start pulling on that thread. Our story begins with a video uploaded in June 2025 by a small YouTube channel named Eki Acres. Most of the channel's videos are about ordinary things, homesteading projects, gear reviews, daily life. The kind of content you'd expect from people documenting their routines and hobbies. But in this video, the creator walks around telling his story. There is no dramatic setup, no music, just a camera and someone describing something that happened to him at a restaurant he says he's been visiting for most of his life.
Had something tonight happen that was very strange, and I don't know how to explain it, but every once in a while I go down to a restaurant that I've been going to for decades, you guys, many years. I used to go to this restaurant even back when my parents were alive, and my dad has been dead for 24 years.
He's not describing a place he's visited once or twice. He's talking about a restaurant that existed as part of his routine for decades. Long enough that the details became fixed in his mind. The owner, the staff, the cook, the kind of place where everything feels familiar, until one day it doesn't. He goes back, expecting to see the same faces he's always seen. Instead, everyone is gone. The owner, the staff, even the cook are gone. At first, it doesn't seem impossible. Restaurants change hands all the time. Owners retire, staff move on. So he asks a simple question.
And so I asked him, I says, is Brenda selling the business? And he looked at me and he says, no, he says, my family's owned the business for 17 years.
According to the people now running the restaurant, their family has owned it for nearly 2 decades, which would mean the version of events the man remembers, the owner he knew, the staff he recognized, the years he spent going there, would have all been wrong. So he tries to reconcile the two versions of the past. Maybe he misunderstood who the owner really was. Maybe Brenda was managing the place, not owning it. Maybe the business changed hands years earlier and he never noticed. All of those explanations are possible, but the experience left him unsettled. Because from his perspective, nothing about the restaurant had changed. Then suddenly, everything was different, and the past no longer seemed to match what he remembered. Later, trying to describe the experience, he framed it as a question.
You go to a restaurant countless number of times for decades. The food's the same, the service is the same, the people are the same, the owner's the same, the staff is all the same, the cook is the same. And then the next time you go, it's up for sale, and the other people that have always been there are nowhere to be found.
The obvious explanation is memory. Human memory is notoriously unreliable. Details blur. People misremember things they're uncertain about, especially when those memories stretch across decades. Statistically speaking, that's almost certainly what happened here. But stories like this have a strange quality. They linger, because once you hear it, another question appears. A question that has fascinated philosophers, writers, and scientists for a long time. What if our experience of the past isn't as stable as we think? What if the timeline we remember isn't always the timeline we're living in? And if something like that were possible, even in theory, how would anyone notice it? Human memory isn't a recording device. It doesn't store events in the way the camera stores footage. Psychologists have known for decades that memory behaves more like a reconstruction. Every time you recall something, your brain rebuilds the moment from fragments. Sights, emotions, assumptions, pieces of context. Most of the time, that recreation is close enough to reality that we never notice the difference, but occasionally the process breaks down. Which is why the first response to a story like the restaurant incident is skepticism. Someone remembers an event in one way, the people around them remember it in another way, and the conflict between those memories creates the illusion that something strange happened. In most cases, that explanation is enough. Whitley Strieber starts in the same place. Before he says anything about time or entities, or the possibility that something outside our reality is actively reshaping the world we live in, He starts with memory.
Memory is not, it's not marble, it's not even plastic. Memory is a liquid. It's a liquid. If you've got something fixed in your memory, that's a special kind of memory. Most memories are very malleable and very changeable.
But Strieber isn't just an author with theories about memory. December 1985, in a cabin in upstate New York, something entered the room whilst he was asleep. What followed, documented in Communion, one of the most significant close encounter accounts in modern history, changed the direction of his life permanently. He has an implant behind his ear that he says was placed there by beings called the Visitors. He gets up at 3 a.m. every morning and he has what he describes as a direct dialogue with whatever is on the other side of it. And what these beings have communicated to him, repeatedly, directly, concerns time. Not where they come from, not what they look like, their relationship to time, because that, Strieber says, is the key to understanding everything they do.
We are inside the stream of time, and the stream of time is always coming toward us. Mm-hmm. Everything in your life and my life is always new. We never experience time any other way.
You never see your future the way you see your past. You only encounter it when it arrives. Every decision, every surprise, every accident happens because you are moving through time from the inside. To describe that position, Strieber uses a simple metaphor.
Visualize them as like fishermen on the shores of the river of time, and us as trout swimming in the river.
From the perspective of the trout, the river is everything. The current carries you forward, and you experience the water as it arrives. But someone standing on the bank sees the entire river at once, the past upstream, the future downstream, all visible at the same time. That's what these beings are. Not visitors from another planet in any simple sense, entities that exist entirely outside the flow of time. And because they're standing on the bank, because they can see the whole river, they can arrange what happens inside it. They can stitch together things differently than we can. They can see where the current is going. They can see where it's been, and according to Strieber, they use that to actively manage the direction of human civilization. Through influence so subtle it's functionally invisible from the inside the current. He's been shown what it feels like from the other side. During his encounters, he was pulled out of the stream entirely, lifted onto a bank, forced to look at the whole river at once.
If you take us out of the stream of time, it's devastating. We can't function outside of the stream of time. For a while after that, your life is all known to you and you are running on rails. It's like automatic. It's horrible.
Every event already visible, every outcome already determined. Not uncertainty, not energy, just the rails. Uncertainty is what makes experience real. These beings understand that better than we do. Think about what being outside of time actually is. If we're three-dimensional creatures who can't fully perceive the fourth dimension, the way a flat creature living on paper can't perceive height, then something outside of time would see the entire shape of human history the way that we see a line drawn on a page. Beginning, middle, end, all at once. From that position, humanity wouldn't look like individual people making individual choices. It would look like a pattern, like a somatic visualization, the kind of shape sound makes when it hits the surface and the interference patterns bloom into geometry. Every modification of the timeline, a frequency. Every intervention, a harmonic that shifts the pattern. Some ripples small, some massive, but all of it moving, all of it being tuned. And zoom out far enough and the pattern doesn't simplify, it complexifies. Fractal. The same shapes repeating at every scale. Individuals, civilizations, epochs, all resolving into the same geometry, towards something. Now, imagine that four-dimensional fractal, the entire pattern of human history, being woven deliberately, designed to fit into something larger, something that has been waiting for the right configuration. Like a key being cut for a cosmic lock, and when it finally clicks open, apotheosis. The idea that time might behave differently than we experience it didn't begin with paranormal encounters or modern internet stories. It appeared decades earlier in the work of science fiction writer Philip K. Dick. Dick spent much of his career writing about unstable realities, worlds that looked ordinary on the surface but underneath were subtly wrong, histories that shifted, people who slowly realized the past they remembered didn't quite match with the world around them. For years, those ideas lived inside his fiction. But in 1977, Dick stood in front of an audience at a science fiction festival in Metz, France, and began talking about those ideas as something closer to philosophy. His speech opened with a concept that sounds strange at first, but becomes unsettling the longer you think about it.
We are accustomed to supposing that all change takes place along the linear time axis, from past to present to future. The present is an accrual of the past and is different from it. The future will accrue from the present on and be different yet. That an orthogonal or right-angled time axis could exist, a lateral domain in which change takes place, processes occurring sideways in reality, so to speak, this is almost impossible to imagine.
What Dick is proposing here is simple in principle, even if it's difficult to picture. We assume that reality changes in one direction, forward through time. Future becomes present, present becomes past. But Dick suggested another possibility. What if reality could change sideways, not moving forward through the timeline, but shifting across it? To explain the idea, he offers a metaphor.
Let us say that there exists this very rich patron of the arts. Every day on the wall of his living room above his fireplace, his servants hang a new picture, each day a different masterpiece, day after day, month after month. Each day the used one is removed and replaced by a different and new one. But now let us suppose the servants temporarily running out of new replacement pictures. Instead, they do a very clever thing. When their employer is not looking, the servants cunningly alter the picture already on the wall.
At first glance, the painting looks the same, but something about it is different. A detail has shifted. A color has changed. A figure in the scene is no longer where it used to be. But the viewer sitting in the room feels the contradiction immediately. Dick describes the moment like this.
The employer enters his living room after dinner, seats himself facing the fireplace, and contemplates what should be, according to his expectations, the new picture. What does he see? It certainly isn't what he saw previously. His brain circuits are saying, yes, it is a new picture. It is not the same one as yesterday. But also it is the same one, I think. I feel on a very deep intuitive basis, I feel that somehow I've seen it before.
That feeling, something being both familiar and wrong at the same time, is the core of Dick's argument. If reality were altered sideways, the way the painting was altered, most people would never notice, because the world around them would adjust to match the new version. Records would match, memories would match, history would appear continuous. But occasionally someone might feel the discrepancy, the strange sensation that the world they are looking at is almost, but not quite, the one they remember. Dick believed that possibility was worth taking seriously. He spent much of his career writing about what he called counterfeit worlds.
I, in my stories and novels, often write about counterfeit worlds, semi-real worlds, as well as deranged private worlds, inhabited often by just one person, while meantime the other characters either remain in their own worlds throughout or are somehow drawn into one of the peculiar ones.
And then near the end of his speech, he introduced the idea that made the talk famous, a sentence that sounded less like literature and more like a hypothesis.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed, some alteration in our reality occurs.
In computer programming, a variable is a piece of information that can change while the rest of the system continues running normally. Everything else remains stable, but one element shifts, and the change ripples outward. If something like that happened in reality, if the past itself were altered sideways, most people would never notice, because their memories would adjust to match the new version. But someone might, someone who remembered the earlier picture on the wall. Someone who walked into a restaurant they visited for decades and discovered that the past no longer matched the present. Dick didn't claim to have proof that this was happening, but he believed the possibility raised an important question. If reality behaves like a system, could anyone ever test it? One man had already been trying to find out, through a tank of salt water in a dark room, and whatever was waiting for him inside it. John C. Lilly was a neuroscientist at the National Institute of Mental Health. Known for his work in brain physiology and dolphin cognition, he built the isolation tank in 1954 as a hard science experiment. Remove every external input from the nervous system and observe what the brain does when it has nothing to react to. That was his hypothesis. It works by eliminating every cue your nervous system uses to construct reality. No light, no sound, no temperature differential. The body is suspended in total darkness, sealed off, weightless, disappearing. And with the body goes something else: time. Without external reference points, the brain loses its grip on sequence. Past and present stop feeling so distinct. Lilly described arriving at a place where past, present, and future exist simultaneously, as a single present moment. Not a metaphor, a description of what the tank actually produced. He began to suspect he wasn't alone there. The encounters hadn't started in the tank. They went back further than that. 4 times near death before any experiments. At the age of 7, under ether. At 10, during a serious fever. At 22, collapsing into vasovagal shock in a dentist's chair. Lilly found himself in the same place. A vast, golden, luminous space. 2 presences, no bodies, no words, pure transmitted thought. He later understood that the Catholic imagery of his childhood, the 2 angels who folded their wings around a frightened 7-year-old, was the only template his young mind had available for what he was actually perceiving. In the tank, for the first time, he could get there deliberately. He describes them precisely in the Center of the Cyclone, published in 1972. 2 points of consciousness in infinite golden light. No bodies. Thoughts transmitted directly, interpenetrating his own. Beings far greater than himself, sent to instruct him. Not gentle, he's very clear about that. Very tolerant, but absolutely ruthless teachers. As a demonstration, they sent him deliberately into the worst state of consciousness he had ever experienced. Calibrated precisely so he would remember it when he came back. A controlled experiment in suffering. In the last of his tank sessions, they showed him something larger. The entire history of the universe in fast forward. Time accelerating. The universe collapsing to a point. Exploding outward. Expanding to its maximum. Collapsing again. 3 times. And each time it expands, humanity appears, briefly, like a light switching on and then off, a thin slice, a flash inside something incomprehensibly larger. During each cycle, the guides narrate, man appears here and then disappears there. Lilly asked, where does man go in between these appearances? They answered, that is us. These beings weren't watching humanity from the outside, they are what humanity dissolved to in between cycles. Humans were given individuality for temporary purposes, then to be reabsorbed into the network when the time came. If beings like this exist entirely outside of the flow of time, if they see the whole river from the bank, all of it at once, what does their involvement in the human life look like? Perhaps nothing that would register as evidence. Perhaps it would look like coincidence. By the mid-1970s, Lilly had a name for what he'd been experiencing. And let's just acknowledge something here. If you've been following this closely, you might be starting to feel like you're losing your mind a little bit, but please stay with us. He called it ECHO, the Earth Coincidence Control Office. The name is the explanation. These intelligences don't work through visions or signs. They work through what looks like on the surface a random chance. A meeting cancelled at the last moment, a stranger who calls you at exactly the right moment, an article you read 3 days ago that turns out to be the exact preparation you needed for something you didn't know was coming. Individually explainable, together a pattern that looks less like randomness and more like a curriculum. Coincidence is the mechanism because it's invisible, and because it's intimate. The pattern is only ever experienced by one person. Nobody else sees it. Nobody else can verify it. What feels arranged to you feels like ordinary life to everyone around you. And from inside the flow of time, a perfectly arranged coincidence feels astonishing. But for something that can see the entire river at once, arranging that call isn't miraculous, it's mundane. What looks like intervention from the inside, the current, is from the bank, just scheduling. Echo is just the local branch. Above it sits a solar system control unit, then galactic coincidence control, and then at the apex, a cosmic coincidence control center, each tier managing coincidences at its own scale, answering to the one above, all the way up to what Lilly simply calls the ultimate creative force. Coincidences aren't gifts, they're a curriculum, says Lilly. In the Dietic Cyclone, published in 1976, Lilly laid out 9 conditions for human agents. Number 7 reads, "Your major mission on Earth is to discover what we do to control the long-term coincidence patterns. You are being trained to do this job." But what exactly is being developed? Not personality, not intellect. Lilly had a specific word for it. Essence. The part of the human being that exists beyond the body and the brain. In his highest states of consciousness, he described losing the self entirely and becoming what he called one of the universal pilots of vehicles. Point of pure consciousness capable of operating at the level of the beings themselves. That's the graduation point. That's what the curriculum is building toward, which tells you something important about what kind of beings these are. Not malevolent, not benevolent, not in any ways humans would find comforting. They're not interested in the personality or the life story. They're interested in the essence, the part that survives the body. An agent in Lilly's framework is someone whose coincidences are being actively managed towards their development, whether they're aware of it or not. The beings overseeing them operate on timescales that dwarf human lifespans, constrained by hierarchy above them that is, by their own admission, indifferent, even to them. Lilly's framework has been out in the world for 50 years. Some people dismiss it. Some find it a useful metaphor. A few people take it literally. In a thread on R Strangeness on Reddit posted in December 2025, a user named Green Fairies wrote this.
"I was having a bunch of weird, sick coincidences a few years ago, and on my break from work I was doing some Googling from my car. I was looking up John C. Lilly's Echo, Earth Coincidence Control Office, because I remember it had something to do with coincidences, and I always liked the guy because of his wacky dolphin stuff. I skimmed some pages about it, but didn't think much of it at all. It was silly and just a fun way of thinking about coincidences in my life. I got out of my car, was walking back to the building, and jokingly said to myself, okay, if Echo is real, give me a sign. And right then, a semi-truck went by that just said Echo on it. I was like, WTF, because I've never seen that truck/logo before. Turns out it's a she brand. Since then, I've chosen to believe Echo is real and responsible for all the weird coincidences, because why not?
It's a shoe brand. The rationale explanation is right there, immediately available, and yet, the system, if it exists, doesn't announce itself. It works through the ordinary. Through the truck that was always going to drive past, the logo you just read. The moment your attention was pointed in exactly the right direction. Which brings us back to the restaurant. Lilly wouldn't have called what happened there a glitch. He would have called it a signal. A moment where the long-term pattern became briefly visible and something in the short term didn't line up in the way it should. A variable that changed, a timeline that shifted sideways, and one man left standing in a restaurant he'd visited for decades holding a discrepancy that the world around him refused to confirm. And Lilly wouldn't have asked whether reality had shifted. He would have asked what it was designed to teach. Thanks for watching this long. Maybe the algorithm brought you here for a reason, maybe it didn't. Either way, subscribe. Echo works in mysterious ways.